So sometimes when I'm sharing my work, you know, whether it be in the theater or in a film, I like to express myself with space. You know, like I think what's really been cool for me working in film, you know, more recently has been to be able to express things without words at all, which, you know, you could do that in the theater as well, but it's more, you know, there's more opportunity to do that with a film, you know, and sometimes I think it's really cool to express things, for example, to express distance, you know, isolation, vulnerability, loneliness, fear, trepidation, isolation, you know, disconnect. You know, I think it's really cool to show a space from far away, and you can evoke this feeling like you're not a part of that, you know, or it's just happening around you, and you know, from your point of view, you're isolated, you're not a part of what you're showing, you know. I think that's pretty amazing. You can do that in the theater, but it's much more difficult. But I'm learning a lot from my film work, and it's really influencing what I'm doing on the stage now as well. And also I think it's really cool to show a place from far away, and highlight that it is specifically what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you could look at something from far away and go, wow, like even amidst everything else around it, this whole world that surrounds this one space that you're showing, that is the subject. And you could either do that with, you know, a depth of field where you can blur everything else out. You know, there's so many creative ways to do it. But I think it's really cool to look at things from a distance sometimes and not be so, you know, up close all the time and in the middle of something and be so literal, so to speak. You know, sometimes it's good to be like looking as a spectator, you know, or maybe if not a spectator, someone who is waiting to jump into the pool. You know, like you're not quite, everybody else is swimming, but you're not really quite sure if you feel safe yet, you know? You don't know if you want to get on that train that everybody else is riding on, you know? You don't know if you can walk into that restaurant, maybe you have social anxiety, you know? Maybe you've been waiting your whole life to finally get somewhere, and you travel miles and miles and miles and years, and then finally when you get there, you have a healthy distance from it, and you just can't quite walk in yet. I think that's a beautiful way to express feelings visually, is to be distanced from it somewhat. It's kind of cool. On the other hand, what's also really cool is to get all up in it, you know, like to get really close to the action, you know, to show that you're unavoidably in the middle of it. You know, like a good metaphor for living in the city, you know, being on the train, being on the streets, you know. It's like sometimes your life feels that way, you know, like you cannot get away from whatever you're feeling, you know. So sometimes what's around you might not matter, you know what I mean? Like no matter what's going on around you, how you feel internally is really what matters. And so that's kind of a cool way to express yourself as well. Like, you know, maybe you can use sound and you can hear all this stuff going on, or maybe you could show, you know, stuff, but then come back and focus on me or you, or, you know, whatever the subject, to show more intimacy, to show more intensity, you know, to bring more focus to, you know, what you're dealing with in that moment. You know, like it's like, you know, those kind of things in life where there's nothing else going on in the world. There is nothing else going on around us right now, you know. It's good when you're dealing with relationships or when you're dealing with a very serious issue or something like that. Sometimes I think it's cool to, you know, show that closer, you know. Maybe something serious is going on, you know, maybe there's a fire, maybe there's a robbery, you know, who knows? I mean, maybe somebody's sick, you know, maybe you're making a big announcement. Maybe, you know, to use an example from before, maybe you've spent years and years trying to get to a place, you've traveled, you've invested so much of yourself to get to this moment, and then you get there, and yeah, for a minute, you're so far away you can't quite commit to it, you can't get in there. But then when you finally do, that's time to really show that moment specifically. Like, when you finally find the courage to step in there, that's a good time, I think, to just show the subject and nothing else around it, you know. I think I'm learning a lot about how to express things visually with less words. And you know, anybody who knows my work, I mean, a lot of you don't know my work, but a lot of people watching this do know my work. You know that I use tons of words. Like, you know, I am pretty well known for not knowing how to tell a short story, you know. I mean, I'm a solo theater artist whose plays, you know, I have solo plays that are 2.5 hours long, which is crazy. You know, nobody does that. But, you know, I've been told, I mean, I know I don't feel like they're long, you know, like when I'm on stage, it just goes by like that, you know, just flies by. I mean, I'm immersed in the story. I'm having so much fun sharing the story. And, you know, people always say to me, oh my God, I can't believe 2.5 hours went by. It felt like 20 minutes or something like that. But I'm trying to learn how to do that with less words too, with just showing things, you know, facial expressions, which is difficult in the theater too, because I'm on stage, and you know, the bigger the stage, the bigger the theater, the farther away I am from the audience, kind of the less intimacy. So I'm trying to learn how to create that intimacy in a large space and not just a small space. You know, it's easy for me to do that if I'm in a small theater. You know, if I'm like, say, when I'm developing work, I'll go to bookstores or small theaters or, you know, art galleries or abandoned storefronts or out on the street or whatever. But once I get to a proper theater, if I'm in a real space, say, you know, 300 seats or 1,000 seats or whatever the case may be, 1,500, I mean, if I'm in a big theater, it's hard for me to be intimate like that, you know, so I'm trying to figure out ways where I can do that. I mean, it can be done, and you know, I have done it. But in film, it's a little bit easier. But what's interesting about film is that you get to make the choice as you're creating it. You know, like you get to be very kind of specific about what you want. You could choose the proper lens, you know. You can choose the proper distance from the subject, you know. You might use, and now there's going to be some technical stuff, but you know, you might use, like right now I'm using a 12mm lens. It's got a little bit of distortion, so if I get closer, first of all, it's a manual lens, so I can't get too far away from where I am because you'll lose focus. But if I get closer, my face gets a little bit more distorted. But there are other lenses like 23mm or 35mm, 50mm, you know, portrait lenses, 85mm, where there's very little distortion. I look more normal. So you might be going for a look. You might be going for, you know, reality. You might be going for, you know, fantasy, and you might want to have a more creative look. You know, you might want to blur out the background. You might want to see everything in the background. I think that's really interesting. But what's really, really interesting to me is to try to cross that from film to theater and figure out how to do that in both, you know. I think that's really, really interesting for me. So anyway, I'm going to cut this short today. Thank you so much for listening, watching, you know. I hope you're well. I hope everybody you love is well. And if not, my heart goes out to you. It's a very, very difficult time. It's getting difficult again. We have to be very careful. Please take care of yourself and take care of one another. And I'm finishing up a film very soon. I'm changing the title of that film right now. And I've also started a new film and a new play. I'm also rehearsing a play that I was supposed to open in 2020, obviously got canceled. But I'm preparing to be able to perform that play called The Red Plaid Suitcase on stage soon. So I'll keep you posted on that. And that's it, you know, and I'm still learning how to become a better filmmaker every day as well, and you know, always become a better theater artist too. You know, I'm trying to me it's all the same. You know, it's all just about telling a story, you know, engaging an audience, you know, trying to create a beautiful shared experience. You know, that's what I'm always trying to do. You know, so whether it's film or theater or whatever you're doing, I mean, to me, you're trying to evoke feelings. Like, why do people come to the theater? You know, why do people watch Netflix? Why do people go to an art gallery? You know, why do they want to go see sculpture? Why do they want to go see, you know, a Chihuly exhibit or something like that? Like, why do they do that? Because they want to feel something, you know, because they don't get that out of their day-to-day life, you know, so they want to feel more. They want something beautiful, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging, even if it's a devastating story, you know, even if it's depressing or whatever. They want artists to turn it into something beautiful so that we can receive this information in the most entertaining, meaningful kind of way, you know what I mean, like something that really touches our heart and our soul, so that we can receive it, and you know, maybe it'll make more sense that way. You know, maybe we could be more open to it. You know, people are so divided right now. Maybe art is the one thing that can bring us together. Personally, that's what I believe. So anyway, I got off on a tangent as usual. Thanks so much. I'll see you on the next one, and peace.